Hello and welcome to the Blood Red Morning Stream. I'm Ben Botchak and I'm joined by my fellow Liverpool.com writer Dave Comerford. And today we're going to talk a little bit about transfers. Mostly just pretty much all about transfers today. Obviously, one that has been going on for some time is the Jude Bellingham rumour, and Steven Gerrard was on BT Sport before the Liverpool-Chelsea game at the weekend, and he spoke highly of Bellingham, and I think he made a few good points as well about why Bellingham might still join Liverpool even if Liverpool don't make the Champions League. What did you make of those comments, Dave? And what did you make of Gerrard's comments in general?
I think, first and foremost, obviously we know that Bellingham idolises Gerrard. He said that multiple times. So obviously to hear that is going to be particularly meaningful for him. And I think there's a possible sort of similarity at the outset between the two, because if you think about one of the things that made Steven Gerrard great during his Liverpool career was that he was carrying often a team that was kind of average and almost putting it on his back and trying to achieve things with it. And you almost feel like it might be a little bit that way with Bellingham. When you look at what Liverpool are like this season, if he comes in, there is going to be a lot of responsibility on his shoulders straight away. But to me, he is a leader. He's captained Dortmund a couple of times already, and a lot of his teammates have spoken about the leadership qualities he has even at 19. And I think he would relish the chance to try and drag the team up with him, to be fair. And I think there is something that makes that uniquely appealing, even though it is uniquely challenging. And I think beyond that, Liverpool can use Bellingham. So you can use Gerrard as a sort of recruitment tool when it comes to Bellingham. And obviously, you can have talks with him. I think that might be something that happens. But I think more so in terms of offering him maybe the opportunity to wear the number 8 chair. We know that Kate is out of contract at the end of the season. I think that'll be something that they do, and they'll really try and sort of sell that sort of comparison, the opportunity to follow in Gerrard's footsteps at Liverpool. So I think, they are trying to kind of appeal to that maybe emotional side of him. It's sort of his football heart, if you like. And we'll see how effectively that works. It's probably their best bet at the moment, given where they are kind of from a competitive standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, Gerrard also highlighted the fact that Liverpool will be playing in a 60,000-seater stadium soon. And do you think that sort of aspect of it goes into his thinking as well? How, Gerrard was saying, Liverpool might be struggling at the moment, but on the outside, this is still a club on the up. There's new facilities being built all the time. And, the training center is relatively new as well. And you have the fans as well that might be appealing to Bellingham as well in terms of, I think he spoke about this before, how he loves playing in front of the Dortmund supporters because they're so passionate and it feels like a very family club. And I think the same applies to Liverpool as well. Whereas if you look at, some of the other clubs that are in for him, potentially Manchester City or Real Madrid, I don't really get that sense. Liverpool is definitely a lot more intimate.
Liverpool's like sort of certainly out of those three clubs feels a lot more like the English answer to Borussia Dortmund. I think if that's what he wants in terms of the feeling that he gets from the club. I think the thing about sort of the stadium and the training ground, things like that, there's been a few reports that Bellingham and his team are essentially going to look at each club and put them on almost a scorecard and look at the manager, teammates, things like that. But also one of the things that was suggested was facilities. Would be something that was considered. Obviously, you're up against Real Madrid and Man City, but what Liverpool have now, I think, is facilities that are more in line with their status, facilities that allow them to compete with those clubs in terms of a stadium that is much more befitting of, I think, the size of the club in terms of the interest in tickets and the training ground as well. Like, that's a really sort of world leading facility now. So I think it's an easier sell now than, I mean, it wasn't too long ago we were looking at a stadium which was only about sort of 44,000 capacity and a training ground which was like, it was all right in Melwood, but it certainly wasn't like elite like the AXA Training Centre is. So yeah, I think all these things all these things actually do play a part, to be fair, and Liverpool will try and do it to sort of sell the fact that even though they have taken a step backward on the pitch. They're moving forward off it, and those two things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. And making sort of strides with your facilities can obviously improve your competitive fortunes too.
Yeah, and I mean, if all else fails, I think Gerrard promised at the end of the interview to speak to Bellingham himself. So Liverpool always have that to lean on as well. But I think another sort of homegrown player moving on from Bellingham, who I think would be a smart move for Liverpool, is Mason Mount. He's been linked recently. His contract negotiations are stalling with Chelsea's current deal expires in 2024. I think he only earns £75,000 per week. So he's obviously looking to get a bump a new deal, but seems to be stalling. And I think the Guardian reported that Liverpool are sort of sniffing about and they would be interested in bringing him to the club. Do you think that would be a good signing as well?
I do. I was sort of pleased when I read about it the other day, to be fair. He looks like a player who would thrive in a club system. And generally, I feel like, whether this is just restricted to social media or not, I'm not sure. But Mount is a very divisive player with Chelsea. And whilst that does maybe raise some alarm bells, I also think from a kind of transfer point of view, it's like he could maybe go somewhere where he's truly loved, because I feel like he maybe would be more appreciated by Liverpool fans than he is by Chelsea. The thing I would say with it is he feels like an alternative to Bellingham, as opposed to someone who can maybe play alongside them. I think I could sort of both see them as the sort of right centre midfield build in terms of looking at this Liverpool side. So I don't think I think it's probably one or the other, and it might be the case that if he's getting to sort of 12 months left on his deal and Chelsea can't demand too much money for him, and Liverpool can't afford Bellingham, then that's the one they look at. But I think there are problems with the deal. Probably the biggest one would be his wage demands, because his reason to leave Chelsea would be that they're not meeting his contract demands. And whilst I imagine he will still sign a new deal, if he doesn't, then he's going to be expecting sort of probably at least, looking at what some of his kind of fellow English players have been getting recently, probably at least sort of 250k would be my sort of guess on that. So is that something Liverpool can necessarily afford? It doesn't really make sort of total sense from that point of view, I think, in terms of the reason for his disputes at Chelsea and whether Liverpool can resolve that, because I'm not sure they can.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering if it's about the money or whether he's looking for a new challenge. Chelsea have gone through a lot of change at the moment, and I think with that inflated squad, maybe he's thinking that's a big project that Chelsea have embarked on, and it's going to be a while until they get back to where he wants to be and playing in Champions League finals. Whereas maybe Liverpool necessarily, I mean, they're struggling at the moment, but necessarily that isn't as big of a project as the one Chelsea have started. And also, I think when we're talking about whether Bellingham and Mount could play together, I think potentially in a 4-2-3-1 with Bellingham and Thiago as the sort of double pivot and Mount in front, I think that would be interesting. I certainly think Liverpool are sort of missing a player like Mount. We've had like Lallana and Coutinho in the past, but we don't really have anyone like that at the moment, and I would like to see someone come in like that. And I think one of the most encouraging aspects about Mount is I was looking at his numbers, and he actually averages quite a lot of tackles in the opposition's final third, which is obviously something in line with what Liverpool are trying to get their attacking players to do. So from that point of view, you can see why Liverpool are interested and why they're looking at him as well.
Yeah, I think Liverpool's sort of personnel might soon lend itself to that 4-2-3-1 more so than a 4-3-3. He's got kind of a couple of ingredients that you'd sort of look at and say they've been almost missing from Liverpool's midfield up to now. Certainly this season, the energy that he possesses was probably the big one in terms of, and that's why I say he's a Klopp player, is that he is someone who is relentless on the pitch, but also, how long have we heard criticisms and rightly or wrongly that Liverpool's midfield isn't scoring enough goals, isn't providing enough assists, and he's someone who I think he's had sorts of one or two like droughts and things like that, but generally speaking, he's putting up very competitive numbers in those areas for a player in his position. So that's another area where he could benefit Liverpool too. So yeah, I think it's an exciting link. I don't necessarily expect it to happen, but I can imagine that it's definitely genuine, and we'll have to see how it progresses. Because I think for now it's a case for Liverpool of wanting Mount to know that they're kind of watching these contract negotiations and ready to pounce if there is kind of a complete breakdown, I suppose, this summer. But although he does have a year left on his deal, a player of his age and his quality is still going to command a pretty high price tag, even if it's not going to be maybe anywhere near what it would be at sort of the full extent of his deal, you'd say.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest hurdle for Liverpool. But regardless, I think it's still one to watch. It like you said, it's an exciting link. One player though who definitely won't be coming to Liverpool is Konrad Laimer. It seems like he's on his way to Bayern Munich. There were interest in him towards the summer, and I think towards the early part of this season. But it seems like he's going to be going to Bayern on a free. Do you think Liverpool have missed out on a player here, or do you think it's not necessarily that much of a loss?
I think so, because we talk about Mount before being a club player. I think the same applies to Lima. Everything I sort of read about him for articles I did on the site, the big thing that was coming up was his work rate. I remember somebody called him a pit bull, I think, at the Euros, because of how sort of tenacious he was in his play, and he just has this incredible engine. And I think he would have been kind of an ideal signing, really, in the sense that he would have been a free transfer, and even if you would have had to pay probably quite a big wage to compete with what Bayern were offering, it should have still have been feasible for Liverpool. And it's a shame they haven't got it done, but it's felt for quite a while that he kind of had his heart set on that Bayern move instead. We see that a lot, obviously, with players in the Bundesliga just kind of making that move upwards to Bayern rather than going abroad. So it's a shame. It was definitely one of the best free transfer opportunities this summer, but as you can see with Mount, Liverpool are still very much kind of aware of interest and contract situations, and hopefully they'll be able to exploit one of those this summer, because they might need to with the budgetary constraints they're going to be under if they miss out on Champions League football.
Yeah, I wonder how much is the homegrown aspect comes into play as well here, because we know Liverpool are probably going to be losing Milner and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain in the summer, and then potentially you have probably Kelleher wanting to move on, Nat Phillips as well. So I wonder how much Liverpool are sort of concentrating on the homegrown players rather than the non-homegrown players as well.
Yeah, Mount feeds into that definitely, and as does Bellingham. It's one of those. It's something you always forget about it as fans, that kind of obligation when you're thinking about transfers. But it's something they're going to have to cater to this summer, and we'll see how they go about that, and whether it kind of informs the stances, like you say, on players leaving the club as well. Because if it's going to create issues with someone like Kelleher leaving, as much as they wouldn't want to stand in his way, probably the same with Phillips, but to a lesser degree, then maybe they'll have to sort of say, listen, we need to keep you for one more year whilst we kind of sort everything out. But I'd say they want to avoid, treating players that way. But if they don't want to maneuver themselves into too tight a spot with it, so we'll see how they kind of negotiate it. But I definitely agree. It's becoming clear that it's going to be something that Liverpool has to be at the forefront of their thoughts, because at the end of the day, it's an obligation that they've got to navigate. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely a lot of decisions to make in the summer, but I think that about wraps it up for today. Thanks, Dave, for joining me. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. And as always, do check out the rest of the Blood Red content going out today as well, and all the written content on Liverpool.com. Thank you.